Tonight, Broken Hill starts to come to life again, but some restrictions will remain and tourism businesses emerge from their COVID slumber, putting a call out for visitors to come back.
From our 7 Spencer Golf Studios, your nightly news with Louise Huber begins now.
Hello everyone. Broken Hill eateries have been inundated with diners as coronavirus restrictions start to be lifted across New South Wales. While the surge of visitation is being welcomed, people are being advised to still keep their social distance.
As the doors opened, in they came. Dozens of Broken Hill diners grabbing a table at local cafes for the first time in 2 months.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've been able to do that, so it'd be good to be back to normality.
All of us sitting here today, 1.5 metres.
For some operators, last night was the chance to transform their cafe to seat patrons, working hard to set up tables to maintain social distancing and meet room capacity requirements. A number of businesses saying they were counting down the days until some form of normal returned, and it has.
It's been hectic this morning. We've been run off our feet. I've got an old staff member in today. She's been smashing the coffees. It's been really, really flat out, but we have loved every minute of it.
It's been very busy this morning. This is the first time, so we're allowed to have 5 in, 5 out, which has been absolutely wonderful.
But if you've been hanging out for a cold one, there's some bad news, with some of the city's pubs not opening their doors yet. Venues like the Tidwell Hotel, the Demo Club and the Palace Hotel still have the closed sign up. Meanwhile, across the city, parks and playgrounds have reopened, the Mayor reminding parents of the importance of staying vigilant.
Thinking about that rules about how many people are around them, making sure that you're thinking about taking your own hand sanitisers, enjoying the sunshine, enjoying the space, but always having in the back of your mind to stay safe and put your family first.
In sport, local tennis players will now be able to take the court for a game of doubles. Previously, singles matches were only allowed. And at the local golf course, instead of 2, 4 players are now allowed to play a hole together. Other restrictions remain in place.
It's good to see people coming out and playing the game that we love and seeing them enjoy it as well. As a business side of things, it's been fantastic. The numbers just, crazy.
Patrick Reinke, 7 Spencer Golf News.
The South Australian government's push for residents to travel through rural cities again in a bid to boost the economy is slowly working. Whyala's Discovery Park is among the many caravan and camping sites quickly filling back up.
It's back to business as usual for this busy Discovery Park. With phones ringing off the hook, the park's bookings are increasing daily, already filling up spots for the rest of the year.
As of today, we're accepting tourists, and they're certainly starting to come. As you can see behind us, we've got a few vans in.
Since South Australia opened up to regional tourism, our phones have begun to ring, which is fantastic. Places like Whyalla and Streaky Bay and elsewhere on the Eyre Peninsula has seen bookings as early as this weekend.
Over the last few months, this Discovery Park was bound by COVID-19 restrictions.
So we were only accepting essential travellers, which obviously were those who needed a place to stay because they had no fixed abode or they were here for work.
Also looking after a handful of workers and travellers who could not cross the border, stuck in South Australia during the height of the pandemic.
Those people that were had to bunker down here because they were from Queensland or Northern Territory.
The park affecting staff with no job to go to, a mutual feeling amongst many businesses hit hard by this economic downturn.
Definitely, we just had to, go with what was happening within the park, and we reduced hours, and now we're increasing hours because things are happening.
We are thrilled to see people headed back to Whyalla and Streaky Bay and the Eyre Peninsula, where the much needed tourism dollars will help the local community.
Many Adelaide travellers already taking advantage of this beautiful beach view, newly updated luxury cabins and a playground and golfing area for the children. Hopefully an incentive for travellers to splash cash within the city.
Puts into the economy, it puts into all sorts of businesses.
Sophia Contagonis, 7 Spencer Golf News.
Scientists are calling the earthquake that occurred near Burra one of the biggest that South Australia has encountered in a decade. Just before 3:30 yesterday afternoon, a 4.3 magnitude earthquake hit the mid-north between Burra and Clare. A local resident took this footage as their ceiling fan and house ornaments started to rattle. The earthquake was felt in Adelaide offices and apartment buildings, as well as the Adelaide Hills and in York on the York Peninsula. Geoscience Australia says it's the largest earthquake in the state for the past 10 years. Welcome back. The sobering reality of coronavirus lockdowns has been revealed, with the latest unemployment figures being released. South Australia topped the charts with the highest jobless rate in the nation, but regional businesses remain optimistic for their staff, with relaxed regulations providing some light at the end of the tunnel.
40,000 South Australian jobs gone.
There's been a huge impact, obviously, on the tourism and hospitality sector, and that has a flow-on effect everywhere.
South Australia's unemployment rate jumped to 7.2% in April, the highest in the country. The national average also increased by 1 percentage point, but economic experts warn that number is unlikely to fully represent the coronavirus impact. Despite the bleak outlook, some Port Lincoln businesses remain optimistic.
As more people start to visit and we start to get more opening of businesses as well locally, that is going to be a very positive development.
As restrictions continue to ease, some Port Lincoln businesses have begun to rehire a handful of workers.
There's been a lot of innovation going on since then. We're seeing the hospitality sector looking at solutions around takeaways and looking at innovation around how they deliver that as well.
Nathan Regter, 7 Spencer Golf News.
The Far West Health District is calling for community vigilance with the easing of COVID-19 measures in New South Wales. The Chief Executive says the number one priority is avoiding a second wave.
It's been 42 days since the second coronavirus case was confirmed in the Far West. As of today, the 2 victims have recovered and the region is COVID-free.
So far, we have conducted about 930 tests, and we are still remaining at 2 positive cases. But currently, we have no active cases at all.
The total number of tests rising as the threshold for being checked is lowered. The introduction of a drive-through clinic also seeing many locals getting themselves looked at.
It's surpassed certainly our expectations in terms of attendance and community take-up. On the first day, we had about 35 cars go through.
Even though coronavirus restrictions are being lifted across some industries, protective measures at health services will stay put, including limiting entryways and screening all visitors.
There's a really inverse relation between lifting of restrictions and the level of vigilance you need.
The local health district also reporting lower than usual cases of influenza due to COVID-19 restrictions.
The low numbers are, in fact, a side effect of some of the, hygiene practices that people have been practicing in terms of COVID-19.
Patrick Reinke, 7 Spencer Golf News.
The federal government backflipping over new airport security measures is being labelled as a win to help attract more visitors to regional centres. Passengers were earmarked to be charged an extra $50 per ticket in some towns.
A long-awaited deal now set to take off, the federal government bending to pressure to scrap its plans of dumping airport security costs onto regional towns.
The intent to impose very significant costs on regional communities, on their airports, was a dumb and damaging idea. It's something that should never have been considered in the first place.
The government first announced it was increasing security screening measures at regional airports in 2018. It set aside $50 million for equipment and terminal development, but it didn't include a whisper of any ongoing operational funding. Councils instead would have been forced to foot the bill.
Those costs would have been passed on to travellers, and indeed the Department of Transport did a study that showed that out of Whyalla, the cost per passenger would be $52 on top of the current prices.
The government has now foreshadowed a new approach to security charges, which is set to see the operational costs spread across metropolitan and regional travellers nationally.
Because it's a national security cost, it's treated as a national cost, not as a local council cost.
It's good to see that common sense has prevailed, so the cost to regional airports will be very marginal.
Around $2 extra.
It'll be a minimal impact.
Whyalla, Roxby Downs and Port Lincoln Airport will all be required to have the new screening equipment by the end of the year.
They've got to be in place in another 7 months,
and operating, and then we've got about 12 months operating money put aside for them.
Nathan Regter, 7 Spencer Golf News.
Stay with us after the break. A Port Augusta driver accused of blowing almost 6 times the legal blood alcohol limit, and community hubs reopen, but limits remain. Hello again. Port Pirie Council is one of those that has started opening public areas around the town, including playgrounds. Leon Stevens, the Mayor, is working closely with the state government to receive more clarity on the regulations roadmap.
A statewide roadmap has given some community facilities the green light to open up, but Port Pirie Council members say they'll also be assisting to advise residents.
3 levels of government are working very closely with this COVID-19. Stage 1 is what we've been talking about just recently.
Following the federal government and state government guidelines and looking at what that impact is on the community and what we can do that's in the best interest for council and the community.
Some business owners were questioning when restrictions would be lifted, but the Mayor says he's pleased the roadmap provides that clarity.
Limbo land is one of the descriptions it's been, but I do believe that it's a brave person that takes the first step, and I believe that this is what the government's been trying to do to make sure that we're super safe.
Many children and parents flocking to get some fresh air and use recently opened playgrounds. Council opting to do their own assessments before giving the go-ahead.
We've also been making sure that we carry out our own risk assessments, but the good news is that playgrounds across our council region are now open.
Organisations such as the RSL are allowed to open, but they're making their own decisions on when it's appropriate to do so.
Still have to make some active decisions when they can start opening and all that sort of gear.
However, the Mayor is warning residents against ignoring regulations with the COVID crisis far from over.
Needn't be too complacent about this. I think we really have to watch going forward that if we stay looking at our social distancing.
Shari Hams, 7 Spencer Golf News.
A Port Pirie man driving while disqualified has been caught behind the wheel with an alleged blood alcohol level of 6 times over the legal limit. Police say they stopped the man, who was driving erratically with 3 passengers in the car, on the Augusta Highway just before 3 o'clock this morning. The 31-year-old recorded a blood alcohol level of 0.290. He was arrested and charged, and because his licence was already suspended, he won't be eligible again for one until 2022. The Whyalla and Port Augusta libraries are among the long list of businesses and community organisations starting to reopen. Councils are still being careful though, following strict COVID-19 measures as book lovers race to get through the doors.
More than 70 Whyalla locals came through the library doors on Tuesday, eager to get back to normality and out of the house.
It's great to see the library open again. This is obviously in line with the skate parks, playgrounds and outdoor exercise equipment as of last week.
For some, it's an educational safe hub, a place where locals can stay out of the cold and read.
Very excited. I haven't been here for a while, so it's good that we can get somewhere and get away.
It's only the first stage at this point, but it is positive for our community, and it is good to see some of the businesses that are now starting to reopen in the city.
The library taking on an extensive list of precautions. Visitors must press the doorbell for a staff member to let them in. After logging membership details, the stay is capped at 30 minutes. Signing out and leaving is through a separate door. Only 10 visitors can be in the library at one time, with books and computers regularly undergoing thorough cleaning.
There are still some restrictions with the opening of the library. It's open weekdays, Monday to Friday, 10 till 3 p.m.
Social distancing also in place, with signs and tape spread across the entire facility. Port Augusta following a similar procedure. Both libraries now offering home delivery options.
For people who still aren't able to leave home or have other issues, we want to be able to make sure they get their library materials. So please ring the library staff at any time, and yeah, certainly we can organise drop and wave.
Port Augusta library hours also changed.
Until further notice, we're only open between 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, so no weekend openings, no late night openings.
Sophia Contagonis, 7 Spencer Golf News.
Coming up after the break, we hear from the experts with this week's Fish and Tips, and we'll have the weather with Brit. Hello again. If your weekend plans include fishing, here's your chance to hear from the experts about where they're biting.
Rightio, welcome to another week around the Golf Fishing Tips. I guess if you guys were brave enough to get out there over Mother's Day and take that particular day to do a bit of fishing, you might have found that you'd have a few squid floating around the place. That's still in big numbers, so we do have to work it out. I think the orange and yellow bibs are the ones that are doing the best results at the moment. King George whiting, if you look at the usual suspect places, Third Creek patches, top end of Ward Spit, and over at Eastern Shoal, you should do all right with the feed. But don't be surprised if you catch a snook or so. So why not, while you're checking between your spots, put a trawl line out and just see if you can pick up on one of those. That's all we've got this week. We'll see you next week.
G'day and welcome to this week's Fishing Tips from Port Augusta, Jewel North. The season's certainly changed. The first sighting of a whale last week was up, only briefly, come up to about 20 k's, up to around the 15k mark and turned around and got back out. If the whales are up, you generally start seeing those big kingfish around this time as well, so don't be surprised if they pop up around. Have a troll for a salmon or a snook and one of them might pop up and get the big rod out there. Crabs are still around. Try a little bit deeper and try a little bit longer as well between pulls. King George whiting, there are some really big thumpers around, not getting real big catches of them, but there are some big ones as well. If you can jag a nice low tide, the razorfish are pretty good. That's all we have from the Jewel North.
G'day and welcome to Fishing Tips in Port Lincoln. Locally, the whiting have been going not too bad down the passage, a little bit hit and miss, but some boats have done well at Carcass and also at Taylor's, especially the boats that have fished early in the day. A couple of boats did get visited by a white pointer last week at Carcass, so keep an eye out if you are in a smaller boat. Back in the bay, the squid have been going pretty well off of the local jetties and also for boaties. And there has been some good sized salmon trout around the rocks at Billy Lights Point. Further down the coast at Sleaford Tawana in the National Park, the salmon have been going really well down there. Quite a few fish in that 2 to 4 kilo size, and they've been providing lots of fun. That's all for this week. We'll see you again with more tips next week.
Now for a look at how your weekend weather's going to be, here's Britt.
Thanks, Louise, and good evening. After a chilly morning, it warmed up to a mostly sunny day. 19 the region's high recorded at Woodner. Clare at the other end reaching 14 degrees. 18 the top at Port Augusta, Kadina and Cleve today. 17 at Port Pirie. Whyalla, Broken Hill and Coffin Bay all 16. Adelaide also reached 16 degrees today, Port Lincoln 15. Now before we move on to tomorrow, let's take a look at today's satellite images. Low cloud about the coast, cleared under high pressure with no rain to be seen. Some wispy jet stream cloud sat to our north, no rain there either. Elsewhere, clear skies under a broad ridge of high pressure. To Saturday now, on the Gulf waters, northeasterly winds at 5 to 10 knots, tending variable about the east coast in the late afternoon. Seas below 1 metre with south to southwesterly swells up to 1.5 metres. And it's looking to be a bright and sunny day tomorrow, perfect for getting out and supporting local businesses. Port Lincoln and Cleve both with tops of 20 degrees tomorrow, Woodner 21, Whyalla and Port Augusta both 20, Kadina 19. Port Pirie and Broken Hill also with tops of 19 tomorrow, Clare 16. And Sunday is also looking sunny with a top of 23 degrees expected at Port Augusta. Woodner and Port Pirie both 22, Kadina 21, Whyalla and Broken Hill 20, Port Lincoln 19. Taking a quick look ahead to the start of next week, Monday partly cloudy about most parts with sunny skies expected about the Flinders District and Broken Hill. 24 the top for Port Augusta, Woodner, Whyalla and Port Pirie 23, Broken Hill and Port Lincoln 22, Kadina 21. Tuesday, showers about the lower Eyre Peninsula, but fine and partly cloudy elsewhere. A top of 25 at Port Augusta, Whyalla and Port Pirie 24, Woodner and Broken Hill 23, Kadina 22, Port Lincoln 21. So Louise, we've got a beautifully sunny weekend ahead of us. No excuse not to make the most of it. Back to you.
Sounds lovely. Thank you for that, Britt. And that's all your local news this week. Thank you for joining us. We'll have updates later. Until then, have a lovely and safe evening. Good night.